Hi there, thanks so much for coming along to see what's available on Conversation Learn. These are the highlights, the automatically generated highlights from Celia's first See, Take, Make series. Plenty to see here from the master herself.
I've entitled my first slide, "Oh Please, Not Another Seed Packet Shot." And as a flower photographer, I found for many years, I think many of you will have heard me say this before, but I found for many years as I started my photography journey that I was doing a lot of spraying and praying. And I am going to read this. I'm sorry, there's nothing worse than a lecturer that needs a slide in front of them as a prop. But I think it just sets the context, and I'll do it quite quickly in my usual gabbly way. So this is a 5-part series of workshops for Conversations, and I'm going to focus on something called a 3-stage process. Nothing new. Seeing the scene, the image as a finished masterpiece or finished image in your viewfinder. What equipment do you have in your hands? What equipment have you got in your camera bag? You also have to be able to recognize the lighting conditions and, more importantly, the qualities of light, blockers, whatever it is that we might need to improve and use. Can you move yourself, your camera, to change the composition or position of your subject or scene? Editing software such as Lightroom, Photoshop, Affinity, etc., so that you're fully prepared and motivated to capture the images you love to take. That make a really good high key or low key image. If I'm looking at a flower and I want to create a botanical study, perhaps I need to consider focus stacking. I need to see in front of me the finished picture before I do anything. Sometimes I look at an image and I think, do you know what? That would make the most beautiful oil painting or watercolor or sketch. And lots of different approaches need to be considered. I often will produce things like flat lays, and I have got a workshop which I hope you'll be interested in, which is coming up next year, which is on how to photograph to make your flowers look transparent. I'm going to show you lots of before and afters as well in just a moment. I saw this photo through the viewfinder, but that's actually what I was looking at. The dahlia in front of me with this orange dahlia and the little centres. And I can't tell you how excited I get when I look through the viewfinder and think, that's what I'm going to do with this image. I'm not going to do it the other way around, which is take the photographs, then come back and start editing them and think, I wonder what I can do with all these images that I've taken. I've slowed myself right down and I start talking myself through what I want to do with these pictures from both sides of that image to act as the background for this particular dahlia. And I definitely kept that stem and that leaf and upright, really standing there saying, I'm a dahlia, we can do something with me. I could see the yellow or the lighter petals of the dahlia. You've seen this one before. This is exactly the same photograph. But when I saw it in black and white and I saw it as a really soft image, but I knew what I wanted to achieve. And that's why I felt comfortable just photographing the original dahlia so that I knew that I would be able to achieve my end results at the lowest aperture I could get down to, which was f2.8. And that worked really nicely for me. I won't keep banging on about it because it is visualization that I really want to talk about. Whether I would need to up the ISO because I wouldn't be able to use a tripod. And if I was to up the ISO, at what point are my lenses going to start, or my camera is going to start introducing noise? And despite the fact everybody says good cameras these days don't produce that much noise, I don't know what it is, but mine do. And I've got fairly modern and brand new cameras and lenses. So I was also considering how much noise reduction I would want to do before I started any image editing. I don't know if that's answered the original question. I do use a notebook for other things, but when I'm visualizing and I want to come back and edit the image, I'm really enthusiastic to do it. So even though I probably took several hundred photographs that day, as soon as I see them on the camera, on the computer, I know why I took them and bring it inside. So I was going to have to rely on the fact that I was going to have to photograph it in situ. We get quite a lot of nice light outside the porch. So that was great. And I knew that if I wanted to photograph and have sharp centres as well as soft focused petals, and I therefore knew that I'd probably have to keep the shutter speed at around on 250th, because even using a tripod wouldn't help with the breeze. I could have put, now the background, I have painted a number of boards, just old mount boards that I'm not using for anything anymore. And you can see in the little inset that I painted these boards with a series of, I also like to do almost like botanical studies, but also make sure that those botanical studies have got a little bit more interest. And when I saw this image through the viewfinder, I moved myself. And I promise you, I now see that when I see those two stems, and I've arranged them in such a way that I've got the buds, the leaves, the tendrils, and one flower head. I know that the background behind it, I can do something with that. I'll always make my own backgrounds, usually from the same image. This I have to say, and I know we're not all supposed to say we love our own work, but and just kept moving the camera into very slightly different positions so that I would have 6 or 8 images of that vase of flowers. And I also knew that I didn't want it to be in the center of the picture. What I saw was summer, and I saw summer tumbling out of a vase where they'd been producing metal flowers for different charities. And it made me think, oh, well, I can turn that into metal. I'll have a go at it. Would you like me to do a little bit of image editing so you can see how these things actually come together? You okay, right. Let me come out of my whoops, sorry everybody, that was probably absolutely horrible for you to have to watch me flicking back through these images. You'll find an image with an incredibly sexy name of DSC. And when I use the spot removal tool, I use it either in lighten blend mode or darken blend mode. And I'll just cover that briefly as we start to edit the images. I use a lot of stamp layers, and that's where you create a new layer based on the layers so far in your workflow underneath one of my final images, so that I could use a radial gradient on a mask in order just to, so I'm going to talk you through this one. We're at 10 to 8. So we'll just do one before we stop for coffee break. And I'm just going to open that. Now, I'm aware that I just launched straight into this pack of images and just click from Photoshop in order to open a raw file. It is the process that I use, although if I open, so I found my 2242 and I'm just going to open that image, do some straightforward adjustments. I might even click the auto option for this and just see what we end up with. I know that I didn't accept these auto options. I felt that even though 0.4 of a stop in that particular instance, so let's just push it up to about there. I have adjusted the vibrance. I wanted to make it a little bit more vibrant, and I've pushed the saturation down just a fraction. Now I want to talk to you about clarity. I knew that with this black and white image, I wanted it to be quite pastel-y. So usually with my flower images, I use texture. So when you bring the texture up, you can see that if I exaggerate it, it's really bringing out the detail in all of these different petals. But let me push the texture down. Obviously not right down to minus 100, or we end up with something that looks like a Barbie doll and has gone far too plasticky. I've stopped using the denoise, the AI tool, because I felt that I got slightly more control with luminance. Not because I don't like AI, I do, but I just feel I get better control by adjusting the luminance. On any image, let me just zoom it up a little bit more, and let's just come over to these pixels over here. So just in the center of your screen, there's a little orange mark. When you use the darken blend mode, if I click on that area with a slightly larger brush than I need layer, there are just a few blobs on there. And if I wanted now to carry on working, I would use the Control Shift Alt and the letter E. If that happens, hold down your Alt key while you click the layer menu. Now, because I'm going to use a mask in a moment, and I'm only going to be interested in the center of the flower being kept intact, and what's on the outside is going to virtually be masked away, I don't have to worry too much about getting the nasty edges of that flower. But just to show you some of the tricks that you can use in order to, and I give that a reasonable distance actually. If you give it 10 pixels, then 5 pixels on either side of your marching ants will be feathered. So let's go with 10 pixels. and choosing this very final option at the bottom called matting. If it's got a black outline around it, you can have a go at selecting. Let me just zoom this up a bit so you can see what's happening. Do you see how it's slightly brought the edge of the image in? What it's looking for is dark pixels, which have been created as a result of me doing that selection. I don't know if anybody's used it before, but it's a really great tool, that one example, where we're going for a black and white. If I was to also add a brightness and contrast adjustment layer, I don't want to make it any brighter. I've already done that, but I might some nice colours in it. And if we go back to looking at the image that I used earlier, if having made this into a black and white layer, I'm just going to add another stamp layer on the top. Now the history brush tool remembers exactly what these pixels look like. Layer again with the dahlia on it and use the move tool so that if I wanted to position this higher up or lower down within that square canvas, I would be able to do that. And of course, I would go out to the ruler so that I can bring my horizontal and vertical guides down, center point of both horizontal and vertical. So if I really wanted to get this absolutely smack bang on, I could move that so it's absolutely in the center, but actually I want it in the center, but I want it above center. And now I'll do the final bit, which is on the very top layer. I'm just going to insert a mask. I may have to change the reverse tick in a moment because I can never remember my left and my right, back to front, but we'll use that in just a second. Do make sure that dither's ticked. It gives you a much cleaner transition between the black to white. I'm going to start in the center of the flower, not the center of the image, the gradient down. I've also got the shift key held down so that I know it's going to give me a perfect circle. So I'll just pull that out to about there. Yeah, that's fine by me. That's all good. Thanks, everybody.
Outstanding. So if you log into the Learn platform, and then if you click on See, Take, Make Session 1, which is over on the left-hand side, and then you've got the links for today's session, and this is where the recording will be located as well. So it's going to be here. And then I've just very, very quickly added a little sharing page at the bottom there.
Of course, I can't wait. I hope people are going to be, inspired and motivated enough.
Absolutely. And just to remind, Gina's just asked me a great question. So thank you, Gina. Yep, I'll also put that on the subscribers page as well. Thank you very much, Gina. And if I don't do it by this evening, Gina, email me, let me know.
Using the file menu in Photoshop, because under the file menu and scripts, let me just check which ones they are. Sorry, peeps. I'm just trying to remember which ones they were. Now I'll select these two layers again. And this time I'm going to go to the edit menu where I will be able to auto align the layers. And even though I'd clicked that earlier, lightness and brightness, which is much, much darker than the top image. So what I'm going to end up with is a flower that looks as though it's got two black eyes, but I'm not too worried about that. So I'm just going to quickly whiz that round so that I get this as sharp as I possibly can, which is what I want to do. It, of course, is actually brightening the whole image. So I've ended up with the image becoming really quite overexposed. Adjust the mask that's being used on the curves adjustment layer. If you hold down the Alt or Option key for Mac users and drag that mask, there was another thing that I wanted to talk to you about. When I said the visualization for this was that I wanted backgrounds that would not be distracting. It has this feature which says if you've got transparent pixels on your layer, you can trim them away either from the top, the bottom, the left or the right. So when you click on trim and choose transparent pixels and click OK, it will trim just those transparent pixels off. Yeah. I had to show that because I've shown it several times recently and each time it hasn't worked. So every time I get the opportunity, I'm going to make sure it does work. So I'm sorry you were subjected to that for a second. When you select the ruler tool, it changes the toolbar across the top so that you can use the ruler as a measurement scale. And sometimes I'm trying to work out how much space there is from perhaps the edge of the image to the first pixel. So if you draw a ruler line, I will just adjust the selection because I want to make sure when I fill it in, it doesn't leave any horrible white lines anywhere. So I'll modify the selection so that it expands by just a few pixels. I'll take it to about 5 pixels, will be good enough for that. I'm just going to convert this layer to a smart object, and it's got 3 settings. I really only wanted to apply grain. If you push the grain filter up, let me just take the highlight area up and then change the intensity as well. They need to work together. Sorry, my fault. So if you bring the highlight area up, you're actually going to do the opposite. Anyway, I wanted to bring up the grain. Sorry, I talked too much. The visibility button for the film grain, you can see that's really, there's lots of other filters that you can use. But if you go back to my visualization, I knew that I wanted to use that backboard because it would hide my porch, but I knew that it might end up being a wee bit on the bright side. So that was one of the tools that I wasn't worried about because I knew I could deal with it afterwards. You really have got to know what your software can do, I think, in order to take the real advantage of visualization. Or you know your camera and your camera controls and your camera settings really well. So I would finish this image off by just adding a brighten and let's do it on that layer. I did wonder why it was all looking a bit grainy. Right, I've just clicked on the mask tool and the brush tool, and let's just try that one more time. I don't know how many mistakes you can make before you stop forgiving me, but let me just try that again. So very amateurish, but I'll just whack the exposure up just a tiny bit and click OK. And hopefully as that image now comes in, because I put together, because this is a completely new series for Conversations, I didn't have time to really time it properly. So I thought, well, rather than end up not giving you enough in the hour and a half or 2 hours, and every single one of them has got a handout which shows you the before and after. So perhaps 1 or 2 of these I'll take for the next workshop. But there's loads and loads of extra things that you might want to play about with or try out, and lots of different exercises. But you should get something completely new for the next workshops that I put together. Right, I'm done. Yeah, if I'm going to somewhere like that where I know it's going to be really busy, I just use my standard as an image. If I was going to do a landscape, I would be taking a lens which was a much better quality. This is fine quality. I don't take a lens baby because I find the lens baby, I need a lot of patience. And if somebody jogs my arm, I can't focus it properly. But I do take my macro lens on one camera and I take my everyday lens on the other. And if I've got the opportunity, I'll use the macro lens because I get better results. I just dip it in these different paints. I just keep splodging it on. And I can't tell you how therapeutic it is. So image mode, they need to use 8 bits in order for most of them to be able to be applied.
My apologies. Thank you so much. And again, if anybody would like to put any final comments in the chat for Celia, please do. I'll share them across. Thanks to those who put comments throughout. And the next time is the 29th. So not next week, but the week after. And Celia, I know this sounds absolutely terrible. I'm looking at the 15th of December and saying that's going to come around really soon, that final session. I'm going to be quite sad about that. Outstanding as usual. In that case, Celia, as I say, thank you very much for putting all of this together tonight. I love the fact you came and said, shall we do this? Absolutely great idea. So thanks very much for doing this tonight. Thanks everybody for coming. And I will see you all in a fortnight. Thanks very much, Celia.